We're breaking down the Buffalo Bills' path to the Super Bowl today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, folks, it's here, the Buffalo Bills 2025 schedule, and we are going to break this thing down from every possible angle and discuss this road ahead for the Bills in 2025, as they've got a lot of big goals to be that number one seed, to win the AFC, to win the Super Bowl, and we are going to talk about the road ahead, breaking this thing down from every angle. Let's do it. Let's dive right in. Let's start by talking about the opener and the opening stretch of games. Obviously, you want to start the year hot, right? But you got a big game in week one, Sunday Night Football, hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Week one, your home opener, your season opener, the Sunday Night Football opener, Bills, Ravens. It's a big one. That's a game that could determine a tiebreaker. That could determine in the postseason if the Bills and Ravens play, if that game's going to be in Baltimore or in Buffalo. And obviously, the Bills ended the Ravens season last year. I'm sure they're going to be coming in all kinds of motivated, and the Bills will too. Bills are going to want to win the game just as bad as the Ravens. But we've seen this. We've seen the Bills have their season ended by Kansas City multiple times to turn around and avenge that loss in the regular season. You're going to get an inspired effort from Baltimore in that game. It's a tough opener. There's no doubt about it. And one of my hopes for the game against Baltimore was that it wasn't early in the season, because I thought the guys that were suspended, Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi, could really be helpful against Baltimore. Michael Hoyt is a versatile front seven player that can play Sam linebacker, can play on the edge. He'd be a very useful piece against the Baltimore offense that's going to put multiple tight ends and the big fullback on the field. He'd be very helpful. Larry Ogunjobi has spent his entire 8-year career in the AFC North. Plenty of games against the Baltimore Ravens. Those have been two players that would be good to have, and the Bills will have to do it without them. So a tough start to the year, there's no question about it. But I really like how things open up after that. So you deal with Baltimore in week one. Then you have a road date against the Jets at 1 o'clock. Thursday Night Football at your place against the Miami Dolphins. Hosting the Saints at 1 o'clock. Hosting the Patriots for Sunday Night Football in week 5. Then to Atlanta for Monday Night Football in week 6. Then your bye week. And then you've got a road date in Carolina in week 8 before your home game against Kansas City. You should be 5-1 going into that bye. You should be 6-1 going into that Chiefs game. Very doable. Very doable. This opening stretch, you get 3 home games in a row, 4 of 6 at home to start, and 4 of 6 are primetime games. Remember last year, the Bills played a bunch of primetime games early in the season. Well, here we are again, cramming them in. Why not space these things out a little bit? 4 out of 6 to start the year, primetime. So an interesting opening stretch, but you get through that Baltimore game. Like I said, you're gonna have a great opportunity to go into that Kansas City game 6-1. Super doable. And you want to start hot, right? You want to start hot. And I think the Bills have a good chance to do that. And I would say, outside of that Baltimore game, the stretch of games that you're going to be without Hoyt and Ogunjobi otherwise looks really good. So you'll take that. A lot of conversation already on the bye week. The bye week for the Bills falls in week 7. And we've talked about this in several episodes recently where past Super Bowl winners, most of the time they have a week 10 or later bye. So it's a little bit earlier than you'd like, but there are several redeeming factors. First of all, and I said this on the schedule wish list episode, if the Bills have an early bye, give me Thursday Night Football late in the year. That's exactly what happens. The Bills have a bye week in week 7, and then they play Thursday Night Football in week 11 against Houston. So you kind of get that mini bye later on in the year, which you love. And that was the story with the Eagles last year. They won the Super Bowl in 2024 with a week 5 bye. Then they had a week 11 Thursday Night Football, which gave them a mini bye, 10 days between games. That'll be somewhat similar to the Bills, except for their bye week. The Bills' organic bye week is week 7. And then a very similar 10-game stretch or 10-day stretch between games that'll be helpful later in the year. But also another great incentive for why the Bills need to be all in on getting that number 1 seed. So that way you get another bye, don't have to play in the wild card round, and you get a bye ahead of a home game in the divisional round. That's what you'd love to get. So plenty of motivation always for that, but especially this year with your actual bye week falling at week 7. But yes, there's definitely a lot of Super Bowl winners, recent Super Bowl winners with a week 10 or later bye. Like we talked about, the Eagles in 2024, week 5. The 2022 Kansas City Chiefs, week 8. The 2016 New England Patriots, week 9. The 2015 Denver Broncos, week 7. So it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. And I'll say this, the Bills' game out of the bye is at Carolina. And I kind of like that. You'd maybe love to play like a super hard game out of the bye, but I like, with all due respect to Carolina, a tune-up opportunity. Not that you take them lightly, but a tune-up opportunity ahead of Kansas City. Because while Sean McDermott and the Bills are undefeated coming off the bye, I don't think they've always played their best football. And the thing about the bye is it's a very clean opportunity to bring back Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi. You're going to play 6 weeks, have a bye, and then they come off the suspension. They can play. It's a very clean transition. And keep in mind, they get to practice for 3 weeks now before they play in a game, because you can start practicing and being around the team 2 weeks prior to coming off suspension. Well, now they get those 2 weeks on a bye week before they play Carolina, and then you get ready for Kansas City. So there's plenty of redeeming factors about where this bye week falls for the Bills, even though it's a little earlier than we'd like it to be. The Bills get 5 primetime games. Let's talk about that. Week 1, Sunday Night Football against Baltimore. Week 3, Thursday Night Football against Miami. Week 5, Sunday Night Football against New England at home. Then Week 6 on the road, Monday Night Football in Atlanta. Week 12, Thursday Night Football at Houston. So you get 3 home primetime games, 2 away, 2 on Thursday Night Football, 2 Sunday Night Football, 1 on Monday Night Football. You maybe wish that you had 2 Monday Night Football and 1 Thursday Night Football, but that's not the way it goes. I will say this, one thing you don't love about that Houston game, it's your furthest travel of the year, right? Your furthest travel of the year against Houston is on a short week. So that's not one of my favorite things about this schedule. But 5 primetime games, of course. There could be some flex games later in the year. All right, so that's the opener, the opening stretch, the bye week, the primetime slate. Coming up next, I want to talk about the rest advantages and disadvantages on this schedule. There are a ton where the Bills have an advantage and they also have a disadvantage. We'll talk about that, the possibility for weather games, and this very, very, very curious distribution of home and away games. We'll do that all here in just a moment. Be sure to stick with me. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. And FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. You're watching these playoffs. They're exciting. They're thrilling. It's even better. It's more fun when you have some action. You have maybe some action on a player prop where you need them to score a certain amount of points, or maybe the game total of total points. I've been doing that a ton. That's where I've had the most fun on FanDuel lately, is watching these playoff games and then needing a particular player to score and hit the over. It just makes it so much more exciting. These games are already exciting. They're even better when you have some action. Look, you know which teams are heating up. You know which players are heating up. If you got a read on that, why not back it up with a same-game parlay? And if you're new to FanDuel, it is the perfect time to sign up, because you will get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. That's right, $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, let's continue breaking down this Bills 2025 schedule. I want to focus next on where the Bills have rest advantages and where they have rest disadvantages, and there are a lot. There are 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 of the 17 games on this schedule feature either a rest advantage or disadvantage for the Bills. This is where they have advantages. Week 4 against the New Orleans Saints, the Bills play Thursday Night Football prior, and then they get the extra time ahead of that New Orleans game in Week 4. They play Carolina in Week 8 with the rest advantage. The Bills are coming off of their bye before facing the Carolina Panthers. The Bills have a rest advantage over Kansas City in Week 9. Kansas City plays Monday Night Football in Week 8, and then they go to Orchard Park. So the Bills have a rest advantage over Kansas City. And the Bills' last rest advantage is Week 13 against Pittsburgh, where the Bills play in Week 12 against Houston on Thursday Night Football. So 4 rest advantages for the Bills against the Saints, Panthers, Chiefs, and Steelers. Now, the Bills have 5 games where they have a rest disadvantage. Week 6, the Monday night game in Atlanta. Atlanta's coming off their bye. Week 10 against Miami. In Miami. The Dolphins play the Ravens on Thursday Night Football prior, so they're going to have a rest advantage over Buffalo because they play the Thursday prior. Week 14 against Cincinnati. Cincinnati plays Thanksgiving night before going against the Bills, so they have a rest advantage over the Bills. The Bills face the Patriots in Week 15 off the Patriots' bye. They'll have a rest advantage. And the last one is Week 17 against the Eagles. The Eagles play the Saturday prior, so the Philadelphia Eagles have a rest advantage over the Bills. So teams with rest advantages over the Bills: Atlanta, Miami, Cincinnati, New England, and Philadelphia. Looking at the potential for weather games, folks, late in the season, a lot of potential. Literally the last 6 games all could be in the cold, which means there could be snow or really gross rain. Week 13 on, all cold weather. These are all November 30th or later. The 3 home games for the Bills, obviously, Cincinnati, Philadelphia, and the Jets, all November 30th or later. And your 3 road games in Pittsburgh, in New England, and in Cleveland. So there's going to be some snow games. There's some very cold games. You can count on that. Plus, of course, the playoffs. Your last 6 games, all with a significant potential for weather to be involved. Cold weather. Your heat games, I think you did okay here. We talked about there being 2 potential heat games in Carolina, in Miami. The Bills get Carolina in Week 8, which is late October. It might flirt with the 80s. It might be in the lower 80s at worst. It's a 1 o'clock kick, so you'll be outside in the hottest point of the day. It shouldn't be terrible. I live in Charlotte. I know this. And then Miami, your trip to Miami is November 9th. It's a 1 p.m. kick, so it'll be at the hottest point of the day. Shouldn't be terrible, but it'll be certainly a lot warmer. It'll be a lot warmer, but at least you're not there in September. So no overly concerning heat games, but a ton of opportunity for cold weather later in the season. The home and away distribution on this schedule is fascinating. The Bills this year, the AFC this year, gets the 9 home games versus the 8 away. As we talked about, 4 of the first 6 are at home. Then you play 7 of 10 on the road. That's kind of nuts, right? 7 of 10 on the road after 4 of 6 at home. And then your last 2 are at home. So you love closing with 2 at home. 7 of 10 on the road in the middle of that schedule. That's crazy. Very, very unique distribution of home and away. 4 of 6 at home to start, 7 of 10 on the road. Your last 2 at home. 1 o'clock kicks. The Bills only have 7 of those. That's 7 last year, 5 in 2023. Your 1 o'clock kicks. Week 2 at the Jets. Week 7 at the Panthers. Week 9 at Miami. Week 11 hosting the Bucks. Week 15 at the Patriots. Week 17 at the Browns. Only one home game. One home game is a 1 p.m. kick. And it's the Bucks, which is a little surprising to me because the Bucks and the Bills are perennial division winners. The Bills have won the East 5 years in a row. The Bucks have won the NFC South 4 years in a row. Marquee quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen. That thing's tucked away at 1 o'clock. I thought that had a good chance of being a primetime game or a 4:25 kick. Slots in at 1 o'clock. That's your lone home game that's at 1 o'clock. The rookie quarterbacks, we talk about these young quarterbacks on the schedule. You get the Saints in week 4. That'll be the Tyler Shuck, Spencer Rattler situation. Shuck is a rookie, second-round pick. Rattler was a mid-round pick in 2024. You get the Jets in week 2 with Justin Fields. That's going to be strange. I wish that game was a little bit later, to be honest with you, because you're going to want to get some film on Fields with the Jets and what that offense wants to be. Drake May in week 5, Michael Penix in week 6, Bryce Young in week 8. And then whatever's going to happen with Cleveland, week 16. Could be Shedeur Sanders, could be Dylan Gabriel, could be Kenny Pickett, could be Joe Flacco. Pull one out of the hat, who knows? Very strange quarterback dynamics in Cleveland for what feels like a 4th consecutive year. So a lot of interesting things on this schedule in terms of the rest advantages and disadvantages, the weather possibility, and how the home and away distribution comes with your unique, young, up-and-coming quarterbacks, inexperienced quarterbacks. You get a bunch of them in the first half of the season, right? All with, really outside of Cleveland, your quote-unquote weird quarterbacks come all within the first 8 weeks of the season. All right, coming up next, I want to focus in on a few more things. I want to talk about where I think the Bills can make some runs. I want to talk about the closing stretch, the preseason, and tie it all together with things I wish were different about the schedule and things that I love about this schedule. So we'll do all that here in just a moment. Be sure to stick with me. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's talk about where the Bills can make some runs. I think it's early in the season. We talked about this. That early stretch is very manageable. You get through that Baltimore game, you should really win 6 in a row. You should be 6-1 going into Kansas City. Very doable. I respect every team. Trust me. If you've been listening to me break down football for any length of time, you know that I can identify the path for any team to beat any team. I respect every opponent, but you really feel like Buffalo should be 6-1 going into Kansas City. So that's where you can stack wins to start the year. And then late in the year, you finish with at New England, at Cleveland, and then you host the Eagles and Jets. You feel like you can win 3 out of 4. Like if you got to win 3 out of 4 to close out the year to achieve a certain seed or clinch the division, you feel like that's right there. And everyone's going to care a lot about the Eagles game, and you should, right? They're the Super Bowl champions. It's not the most important game on the schedule. Those NFC games are not the most important. Your last 3 AFC games are Patriots, Browns, and Jets. Super manageable if you need to stack those wins. And the Bills have been in that spot where they needed to do that. I think the defining stretch of this schedule is the 6 games from week 9 to week 14. You host Kansas City, you go to Miami, you host Tampa, you go to Houston, to Pittsburgh, you host Cincinnati. That, to me, is the defining stretch of this season. You need to go at least 3-3 there. You need to go at least 3-3 there. If you do the 6-1 thing, then you go 3-3, and then you win 3 out of the last 4. Well, that's your path to 12-5. 12-5 probably wins you the division. Does that get you the 1 seed? I don't know. You probably want to win 13 or 14 games to really be in that conversation. But that's just generally, if you look at it like that, can you go 6-1 heading into Kansas City, then going 3-3 in that stretch of Kansas City to Cincinnati, week 9 to week 14, and then can you win 3 of the last 4? That's your path to 12-5. Talked about the closing stretch at New England, at Cleveland, host the Eagles, host the Jets. If you need to stack some wins, you can do it right there. The preseason schedule is interesting. The Giants to start things off, then the Bears and the Bucks. You play the Bucks during the season. That's not very normal to play a game in the preseason against a team you play during the year. But it is the last one, and the last preseason game is typically just, let's just get through this thing. So your meaningful preseason games will be the Giants and Bears. And obviously familiarity with a lot of the coaches with the Giants, although I don't think Sean McDermott and Brian Daboll like each other very much. But you'll get to see Jackson Dart, a rookie quarterback. That's fun, right? I always like to see the rookie quarterbacks in preseason. We'll get a chance to see that. And then the Bears have a couple of young quarterbacks, and Caleb Williams and Tyson Bagent. We'll see a lot of Caleb Williams. It'll probably be the game he plays the most in. So an intriguing preseason slate. Let's close this thing out by discussing the things I wish were different and the things I love about this schedule. The things I wish were different. Number one, I don't love the opener against Baltimore. I like a layup in week 1. I'm not going to lie. I like a layup. Baltimore in week 1 is not a layup. I think the Bills and the Ravens are the best 2 teams in the AFC. And both teams with a good amount of continuity, with some sneaky good upgrades on both squads. I think the redeeming part of that is the Ravens are a difficult opponent. They're a unique opponent in how they play offense, and you get the extra time. It's not like you have to figure out Baltimore in the middle of the chaos of the season. It's week 1. I think that's the redeeming part of it. The same thing's true for them. The Bills are a unique opponent. Josh Allen's a difficult player to play against. You don't have to figure that out in the middle of the season. It's week 1. But I do wish that the Bills open with a different team. I wish that the home dates against Miami and Tampa were later. I want to bring those boys from Florida up in the cold. And they avoid that for the most part. I wish the bye week was a tick later, although we discussed the redeeming factors there with the Thursday night football later in the year. And it's a manageable stretch without Hoyt and Ogunjobi, so there's redeeming qualities there. I do not love a stretch of games where 7 of 10 are on the road. That's far from my favorite thing going. I do like that there's a bye week in that stretch, but I mean, you're smashing all your travel really into a 10-week window. And I don't like that your longest travel game of the year is against Houston, and it's a short week on the road. So I don't love how that played out. Things that I love about this schedule, well, I'll probably start with this: no holidays. You know, I'm always sweating that. I mean, I just got to be real with you. I got a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old. I got nieces and nephews. I want to hang out with them on Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I love the Bills, but if the Bills play a game, it means every bit of a 6 to 8 hour workday for me. I just want to play with my kids on Christmas and hang out with my family on Thanksgiving. The Chiefs, Lions, and Cowboys all play on both. They play on both, Thanksgiving and Christmas. Pour one out for the stadium workers and everyone involved. You got to be there for both. Come on. I like the distribution of the heavy-hitting games. You get the Ravens in week 1, Kansas City week 9, Houston week 12, Cincy week 14, Philly week 17. They don't really stack up, but you get Kansas City, Houston, Cincinnati, and Philly weeks 9 through 17, where you'd like to think the Bills are kind of hitting their stride and playing their best football. So I like that. I like how the division games have some space between them. Not necessarily like, I know there's a stretch where the Bills play like the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets in a relatively short window, but we're not doing this thing like we did last year where 2 of the last 3 were against the Patriots. I like that you get a chance to see them spread out throughout the year. I really like the manageable early schedule. So after that Ravens game, I keep talking about it, 6-1 going into Kansas City. Great opportunity to start the year hot. I like that a lot. And so I think this is where I land on this schedule. I'm mostly satisfied. There's always going to be some things that you'd like to tweak and wish were a little bit different. But I'm mostly satisfied. It's a manageable path. Of course, some things you love to change. But I'm mostly satisfied. And I think that's a decent place to be in your initial reaction to a schedule. Now, obviously, so much is going to matter throughout the course of the year. Injuries, who's playing well at what time. Like, there's a timing element, right? Like, you look at some of these games like Cincinnati. Cincinnati has been a different team later in the year than they have been early. But who knows how that's going to play out this season, right? So everything's preliminary. We're taking an early look at it all, but it's certainly fun to consider all the dynamics in play. And I certainly hope that you found this conversation to be exactly that, where we were able to really get into the weeds here with this schedule and how it lays out for the Buffalo Bills. So you know the schedule, but I hope that you listen to this and really have a great feel for everything in play for the Buffalo Bills. So there you have it. The path has been set. Now it's time for the Bills to take them one at a time, stack a bunch of wins, and do the thing we want them to do. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.